You're listening to The Comedy Club.
The Comedy Club.
The Comedy Club.
The Comedy Club on BBC Radio 4 Extra.
Hooray!
We were still young. I mean, we were 22, I suppose, 23 when we came. You know, we were the young bucks and we did well pretty early, I suppose. We did all right on weekending most of the time, and some weeks we got, and some producers didn't like us, but most of them did. You know, we worked with Armando, we worked with Harry Thompson, who really liked us, and so we were sort of these bright young things, and you know, we'd get occasionally they'd write articles about us in the newspaper if they were writing about weekending. We were the hope for the future, you know. And that
so there was, when you started doing things like Fist of Fun, there was a sense of you being on the way.
Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, it all just progressed. Like, I'd read this book From Fringe to Flying Circus when I was a kid that I was obsessed with all the Monty Python guys and their sort of journey from the Footlights through to radio through to TV. And so I'd sort of decided that was the way I wanted to go, more than stand-up. We were doing stand-up and Stu was doing very well at stand-up and I was not. I was doing not so well at stand-up but still doing it. But I really liked the progression
of radio. So was stand-up something that you kind of really came to and lived in after all?
Yeah, I hated it. I did it 89, 1991 and hated it.
But I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think looking from here, and part of what was, I mean, this is totally like a sort of fan's perspective, but I think that you know, that the reason it was happening then was because it was like alternative comedy coming of age, and there was this kind of moulding of what was sort of wild and crazy and we can do anything with sort of the history of comedy and wit. They were coming together, and it was like and the stand-up was like the front line because it was kind of wrestling. You know, Eddie Izzard just said, "Oh yeah, I died forever," you know, for all the gigs I ever did. To get good. I
think what was interesting about the Lee and Herring double act, and probably the thing that would drive it apart eventually, was that Stu really embraced stand-up, and I would turn very against the stand-up circuit because I felt the stand-up circuit hated us for going to Oxford University, which was, you know, not.
I don't know where you're getting
not
that.
Entirely untrue, but I'd had a very unpleasant experience. But that meant that we were doing this double-pronged attack where he was doing fantastically well as a stand-up and pretending he didn't go to Oxford University, and we were also doing radio stuff where, ironically, you know, I think we were too weird for the Oxbridge establishment. So we really had people fighting saying these guys are good, and we weren't very Oxbridge. So we had the kind of worst of both worlds.
Yeah. But also, like say, because you were like the two of you were yin and yang, sort of galvanised.
He sort of reluctantly did the double act, pretty much all the way through the double act. He sort of reluctantly went along with it, and knowing that he really wanted to be a stand-up, which, you know, I think was probably the right thing for both of us, because I think he needed those.
Did he go on to
No, nothing happened to him, unfortunately. He kind of split up with me, and then that was it, as far as I understand it. But he probably needed those. He needed those 10 years of, you know, to get a bit of chops and get a bit older, and, you know, so it all worked out very well in the long run for both of us. But we were, you know, I was very excited. Yeah, it felt like, you know, every step we made was a step forwards, and then getting a Radio 1 show was very exciting. So we because it was all through Light Entertainment, and it was still this element where there was Jonathan James Moore was the head of Light Entertainment then, who was this. I think he'd been involved in all the 60s sort of Cambridge Footlights shows, but he was this massive ginger beard and lovely, very lovely man. He's sadly passed on since then, but he was a lovely, eccentric, weird, strange man. And he liked us, and you know, we'd been on the corridor a lot. We were contract writers for a year, and so we kind of got to know all the producers. So going to Radio 1 was no different, because it was just, we were still with all the same people. Our producer was Sarah Smith, who'd done all of the other radio shows we'd done as well. I spent all my time in this corridor. You know, we would be up working late. Sarah would work editing things right to midnight. We'd be sort of sitting in a room typing, right. Well, I would be, Stu would be out having fun and turn up at 12 o'clock in the hour, midday the next day. But, you know, I was in that corridor so much. And so we were this little group of people, like-minded people. And that's how comedy works, isn't it? You find, in the old days, you would get a group of people who were funny and had a vision and that you trusted, and say, oh, go and make some stuff and
Here's
see what
money.
happens.
Go for your life.
And, you know, that's how Monty Python happened, and that's how, you know, and that's how On the Hour happened. It's how lots of very interesting things happened. It's just like people going, well, I like you, let's do something together and let's see how it goes. But I'd listen to Radio 4 more than I listened to Radio 1, if I'm honest. When I was a student, I loved Just a Minute and stuff like that, and I would listen to the comedy output on Radio 4 much more than I'd listen to Radio 1. But it felt like, oh, this is something, you know, people are interested and excited about. And so we went and toured around these universities, and in fact we started working with Kev Eldon, the actor Kevin Eldon. He was on the stand-up circuit, and we really got on with him. He did quite a weird act, and we really liked him. I think he was called been called Kevin Boyle on the stand-up circuit. I can't remember. I might be wrong. And we really got on with him, and he really got on with Stu, and they were really good friends. And Stu was just having a drink with them and said, we've got to go to Exeter to do a radio show. And, it's 50 quid. We can't find anyone who'll come and do the sketches with us. And Kev said, I'll do it. So that was literally why we ended up working with Kev, really. And then but Kev really slotted into what we were doing. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of characters who were basically that Simon Quinlank, very obsessive. We were obsessed with fanzines at the time. It was all these printed black and white fanzines you get of borderline stalker crazy people writing about Janet Ellis or whoever, and we found them hilarious. And people being obsessed with hobbies, and it was a pre-internet, but that kind of internet nerd
because
thing.
It's so in the spirit of the internet.
Yeah. But so the internet was sort of happening, but no one was seeing it. You'd find Stu was amazing at finding all these kind of weird things. So we became obsessed with obsession, and Kev was just he just got what we were doing and did it in a way neither of us could have been Simon Quinlank, so he understood it and took it like on another level.
Close enough to you to get it, but far enough from you to make it into something you could never imagine.
And as time has proven, he's just an incredible, versatile, amazing actor who's so committed to everything and so brilliant. And I'm again delighted the success he's enjoying, which is thoroughly deserved. But
and also lucky that gig was in Exeter, because loads of other much more rubbish people would have jumped at it.
They would, exactly. So, but you find we bit by bit we found a little team of people who we enjoyed working with. We know Peter Bainham and who we just met he was doing stuff in the Comedy Corridor and weekending at the same time as us. I am a prime example of the importance of sort of persistence, working hard, persistence. I've been going for 30 years, and there's been ups and I've had some successes. I've always been around. I've always been doing stuff. I've always been working, and that's all I want to do is to carry on doing that. The thing that's difficult when you're young, and the thing that I didn't have when you're young, is the patience to wait and say, "Hey, I might get better at this if I do it a lot." And also the industry itself is very keen on plucking someone out of a new person before they've had a chance to develop. So you're actually very fortunate if you can manage to dodge enough under the radar to not become that big name.
Going right back to those
but keep working.
Early radio days, at least, although you were sort of like young and thrust, you had space to create within that.
Yeah. And so I think that's it. It's about learning how to do it and carrying on, and then take it for a long time. And I think
in the end, you don't have to create anything anymore. You can just go through all the ridiculous things you ever said.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, that's the nice thing about going so long is you can go, every now and again I go back to stuff I wrote in the 1990s and just stick it into something I'm doing now. Everyone who listened to that is dead now.
And not just you. We can take recordings of you in the 1990s.
Yeah, that's the problem with this show, this channel, is it keeps on playing my old stuff. And hold on, everything he did last year, he did in 1992.
It's quite exciting this week that I'm doing of the Comedy Club because it's all 90s radio and comedy. So that is Fist of Fun for a start. For me, I think it wasn't just for me. I thought it was just for me, but it was there on the radio, and that was it. That sort of opened one's eyes to comedy.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say so. It was a kind of amazing opportunity to... When we started out, me and Stu, just a lot of doors were opening and closing, and we managed to get through them. We've been doing lots of Radio 4 things, and we've done On the Hour, and we've done Lionel Nimrod's Inexplicable World. We've done a show called...
Say that title again, please.
Lionel Nimrod's Inexplicable World.
Yes.
Often available on Radio 4 Extra, unbelievably. And we did a show called It's the End of the Road Show, which we toured around. We only wrote that show. Armando script edited it. And it's people like Rebecca Front and Nick Hancock were in it, all kind of pre-fame. And they toured around universities. But I think that was a Radio 4 show. And then suddenly they started to say, "Oh, hey, why don't we do some comedy on Radio 1?" I think maybe it was 9 or 10 o'clock. I can't remember what time it was, but it was sort of in the evening time.
I was washing a lot of dishes, so it must have been after the dinner rush.
It was. And so we did this live, in the end we did this live Radio 1 show, but before that we did Fist of Fun. We toured around universities again. So I think they were looking for something. I'm trying to work out whether it was on Radio 4 first. No, it was on Radio 1 first, I think. But we were all...
You're here to tell me all about it. I can Google it. Was it a live show before it was on the radio at all?
No, we'd not very much live together, really. I think we'd maybe done a few like student gigs together as a double act, but we'd really done Lionel Nimrod, which was sort of a scripted show in which... we were sort of versions of ourselves. So there was a sort of double act dynamic to it, but we were writing together, me and Stuart. And then so from that doing quite well and doing quite well on Radio 1, they asked us to do another show that then toured around universities. I think that was the idea of Fist of Fun.
When you were going from Radio 4 to Radio 1, was it like immediately kind of vibey and like, hey?
I don't think it made much difference. So we were still in the light entertainment department. So we were still in this very fusty old 16 Langham Place, which has now been smashed and knocked down, which was a very weird thing to see your... that was the corridor we first wrote on shows like Weekending, and I hated doing that and hid in some crates one week because I didn't want to do the show. And literally, it was just it was sort of a joke, but it was like I thought I might never come out of these crates.
You mentioned Armando Iannucci, and you did his show then as well.
Yeah. So that was it. Was a lovely time. There was an amazing time where we had this little gang, I suppose, within the light entertainment department of people who were all kind of trying to do something a bit different. So yeah, we had known Armando a little bit. He was at university with us, and I'd seen him do stand up, but we weren't friends. And he just we did a Weekending. He did Weekending for 8 weeks, and as a producer, because he was a producer at that time at the BBC Light Entertainment, and he just really liked what we were writing. He wanted to change Weekending because it was this fusty, quite predictable, sort of quite formulaic thing, and he did a sort of mini version of On the Hour as his 8-week stint on that, and we suddenly started getting lots of our sketches on. We met Armando with that, and then he was doing his radio show, and then I remember liking it because usually Stu was doing pretty well as a stand-up on his own, and I would only really get any work with Stu. But with the Armando shows, it was like I'd been invited on as myself, so I would be one of the guests, and we it was quite improvised, and we'd have a think we'd meet up and chat about what we were going to do, but then you were allowed to do whatever you wanted. I heard one on 4 Extra the other day, and Stu was at a gig, and we rang Stu up in the middle of the show because all these shows were live, these Radio 1 shows we did, and Stu's just drunk with this guy and go, tell him what you're wearing, and then they go, what's going on, Stu? And then this guy comes on and it's babbles, and it's just complete live stuff, and it's awful whatever's happening, and it's still being played.
Getting people on later, and letting them do what they want to do can go too far, can't it?
And no one and Stu thought whatever was happening was funny, and he couldn't really explain what it was. And then the guy just seemed to be a drunk man. But that was, so it was a very improvised show, and then we would do it was like On the Hour. We'd have like sketch ideas, and then we go, I remember when we were all people from different religions, maybe locked in a house or something. I was going to say like a Big Brother house, but it was before Big Brother. I can't remember what it was, but we were all locked together.
Are you claiming that you
I think
came up with the idea?
I think Armando came up with the idea for Big Brother. There was some, like, we were parodying something. We all had to pretend to be people from different religions, but you would basically just have a conversation between, as if you were those people. They switched the cast around. Rebecca Front was in it, and Stu
all I know
sometimes.
Is that the one we're playing is the best one.
Is it good? Because I'm in. It's one of the ones I'm in.
Yeah, that's right.
It's such a weird, I think I was very excited to be a part of it, and but also really nervous. I really wanted to do lots of acting. And at that time we were sort of seen as being writers, and I was especially seen as being a writer, and with On the Hour we'd been the writers, and I would have loved to have obviously been in On the Hour, but so I was really nervous that I was working with Dave Schneider and people like that, and Armando and Peter Bainham, and having to to act alongside them. So I remember being very self-conscious. So I bet you can hear that in my voice as you listen to this, this excited child being. And I found someone else emailed me something like I did a TV show called The Net or something in 1995, which was about the internet, and just my whole persona.
I shouldn't think that dates.
No, but it was about me, and it was just me talking about the internet and being really sarcastic. But and I'm sure I was like this in Armando show, just that tone of voice where you're just sarcastic and ironic about everything, just so that you're safe from not having to
just completely defensive.
No, if anyone goes, do you think that? No. And I've just got this horrible, sarcastic, weird voice I have. So I'm sure I won't be listening to this show. I'd like to apologise for my part in it. But yeah, there was fun times. I'm doing the Lee and Herring show, which came after Fist of Fun as well, which was again a more studio based thing where we improvised a lot of stuff. We wrote sketches. I mean, we worked so hard, and I worked so hard. Stuart came in sometimes, and certainly played his part. But we wrote reams and reams of stuff. I mean, and then we were able to use a lot of the Fist of Fun stuff. Went on, of course, to be on the TV version of Fist of Fun. So it was this amazing playground, training ground. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it was actually
you were giving
going
to that as well, like you said, working hard, creating loads of stuff, and just an outpouring.
Yeah, and that was my. All I wanted to do was be a comedian. I wasn't really interested in anything else. We had no money. Couldn't go out anyway, so it was nice. Sometimes they'd have a party at the Light Entertainment Department. You could steal a bottle of wine and drink that at home. If you look, in my own personal history of that time, it was an interesting time. I was very insecure, and I was, as it turned out, surrounded by all these people who are going to become, this generation's sort of massive stars, really. Armando and Stuart and Rebecca Front, Kevin Eldon, all these people are like such important figures.
It was one of those moments, wasn't it?
And so it was great to be amongst that, and it did feel like something a bit special, and it was very exciting to be part of it. And it was my whole life wanted to be a comedian. Like I said, I would read these books about Rick Mayall and John Cleese and Michael Palin, and you'd think, wouldn't it be amazing to be in any situation like that.
And there'll be more from my chat with Richard later in the week, where he reveals that... as if I'd tell. Plus, more from Simon Munnery and Matthew Bannister. It truly is 90s-tastic here at the Comedy Club this week. Nice one, sorted. Anybody got any Veras? Lovely.
You are listening to the disarmingly hyper-wonderful, brilly best of all things, the Comedy Club.
Comedy Club.
On Radio 4 Extra.